All right, so in the first part of this series, we kind of just set up a client folder that has like React and React Bootstrap and React Router. And then we also set up a server folder that has Express and Mongo DB kind of set up using Mongoose. Let's try to figure out what else we can kind of add to this project. And again, I don't really have a solid plan of what I'm going to add, but I think since we are trying to build like a shopping cart / e-commerce site, it'd be cool to focus on one of the most important aspects, which would be items, right? You have like a product, a catalog, and the user can search through those items to find the things that they need. So let's just go ahead and look at the backend real quick. And if you remember in the last video, we created this schema for blog posts, but this was just some example code I copied online. What we really want to do is like make a different schema for the product, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of refactoring. I'm going to make a source folder here. A lot of people like putting their like code inside of a source folder. And when you change that and move the index, make sure you refactor your package.json. And then also restart my API because it doesn't know where to find that file now. And you'll see me refactoring a lot in this video. I like to start simple, do the easiest thing that I can do first, and then I go back and just refactor some code. So right now, this file is actually pretty big. Like I know it's only 28 lines, but it's just a mess. I just threw a bunch of stuff together here. So what you can start doing is kind of splitting out modules into different folders. So I think I would just make a models folder. And there's a lot of different ways you could do this. It doesn't really matter as long as I think your logic is kind of separated. And you want each model to be kind of separated out into its own folder. So let's make a new model here. This is going to be like a Mongoose model. And let's call this product.js. And inside of this file, we really just want to kind of like run all that schema related stuff to create a blog post or create a product. So I'm going to kind of copy this stuff. In fact, I could probably just cut it all out and just paste that right into the product.js. The backend is going to crash until we fix a couple of things. But let's rename this to like product schema. And does this need an object ID? We probably don't even need this, but let's try to figure out what would be in our product. So when you're building out applications, you typically have data models that you need to define in your code or in your database. So in this case, we have a product, and that product probably has like a cost associated with it. This could be, I guess we could call this a number. It probably has a name, so this could be a string. What else would a product probably have? A description maybe? I don't know. We'll do a description and see how that works out. And cost, name, description. I don't know. Let's just start with that, and we can simply add on things as we want. I'm going to rename this string to product as well. And I'm going to say product model. And I think what you can actually do is you could export this. So I'm going to say export const. Actually, this is in common.js. So I'm going to say exports.product model is equal to product model. So this is basically for setting up the Mongoose model and then exporting it so that we can import it in other files. Let's go back to our index file because now we need to like import that, right? So I'm going to say const product model is equal to require / models and product. All right, so now we're going to basically bring in that module that we defined, and we are going to use that instead. So we're going to do that here, product model. And what else do we need to probably do? Okay, so this keeps failing. Let's see what it's failing on. Mongoose connect is failing. So I do need to make sure that in my index, I am including Mongoose. It'd be really nice if I set up ESLint so that we can actually see like issues. And honestly, I would probably use TypeScript if people weren't so like confused and overwhelmed when the word TypeScript comes up. But TypeScript is a much better thing to use, in my opinion, if you're a beginner, because it's going to show you like what you're doing wrong. But at the very least, we could try to set up ESLint so that it can kind of complain when we're doing some stuff wrong. So I think the API is working now. What we could probably try doing is now when you hit this hello endpoint, well, let's just kind of set up what we need. So we need cost, name, and description. Cost could be like 1122. Description is paper towels, or not. That could be. Wait, what? Name. Let's put that name. Sorry, I need to slow down and think about what I'm doing. So description for paper towels is very absorbent and awesome. I probably spelled absorbent wrong, but this isn't an English class, so I hope you guys don't judge my spelling. Let's go and run this in the UI. So I'm going to go to localhost 8080/hello and see if it crashes. It didn't crash, so what should have happened is it should have created a model or a table called product model or whatever in the shopping cart database. So let's go back to this Mongo tab. I'm going to say show DBs. That is a command you can do to show all the databases in Mongo. And I do have one locally, so I'm going to say use shopping cart. And then I'm going to say show tables. And I'm going to use the product. So I'm going to say db.products.find, and that should print out all the products that exist. And notice that we do have one with an ID, a cost, a name, and a description. Now notice that the cost, I actually kept this as four letters or 4 characters. What am I saying characters? 4 digits, right? And I kind of wanted to avoid using decimals, but let me do this. Let me just make that a decimal. Stop trying to be so fancy. So let us just hit that again and create a product with a $11.22. So $11.22. All right, so we have a product now, and what I would probably do before you start diving down this path is we can refactor this a little bit more. We have an endpoint here that could be abstracted out into a different module. So I'm going to make a new folder called, I guess you can just call it controllers. And I'm going to make a new file called, we'll call it like create product. How about that? So we are going to copy this code out from rec to res. Actually, we're just going to copy this code out. Create product. So yeah, so what we want to do is instead of running this code here, sorry, I'm just not thinking clearly today. What I need to do is export a function called create product, and we are going to paste that in here. And now inside of this index, what I'm going to do is just require that. So I'm going to say const create product is equal to require / controllers create product. Now I've seen there's like so many different ways that you can kind of structure your Express app. Some people have like a routes and they do like nested routes and nested routers. Just do whatever you want to do. Like there's no right or wrong way, just as long as you're consistent in the manner that you choose. And if you're on a team, make sure that your whole team just like decides that, yes, this is the approach that we are going to do. So I'm going to refactor this endpoint. Right now it's doing a GET request on products, but really we're trying to like add an endpoint that a user can hit with a post request to create a new product. So I'm going to change this to app.post. If you're new to Express, you can do like GET here. You can do post, you can do put, you can do patch, delete. Head is one, but I'm going to do a post. So if someone hits this endpoint with a post request and some product data in the body, then we should probably create that product. We don't need product model anymore. You see how this is kind of grayed out because it's not used anywhere. So let's go ahead and cut that out. And I think we needed it up here. So let's import this here. And we probably need to go up a level, make sure that's the correct path to get that product model. And I like the name that's coming out of the file to match the actual file name itself. So I'm going to rename this file to product model. So I'm going to go here and rename this to product model. And I want to make sure that I'm exporting product model. I am. All right. I'm also doing some more refactoring. Like I like to actually have my controllers have the suffix controller. I know I'm kind of like jumping around here, but hopefully that makes sense. I just like to have like the stuff that I'm creating match the file name. Now the main reason I like doing that is because I can easily say create product controller and look it up with fuzzy search. Because sometimes you have a lot of files that have like the same name, like create, and you might get like 50 different options once you start getting a bigger API. So the more specific that you name your files, it's easier to kind of search for what you need. But yeah. All right, what are we doing? So again, what we've been doing is just refactoring some code. I kind of cleaned up this index file to separate the controllers out into separate files. And then I also separated the Mongoose model out into a models folder. And then I'm calling this endpoint with a post request now to try to create a product. So let me show this with Thunder Client. This is a VS Code extension you can use to basically hit endpoints. And let me clear this out real quick. And I wanted to show you, if I do a new request here, I can do a post request to localhost 8080/products. And that is how I can verify if this endpoint is doing what we intend it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the body and make sure that JSON is selected, which it is. Kind of minimize this a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is just put in some JSON content. So we probably want the front end to be able to eventually do a post request to the back end and send over some data. But for right now, we're just going to do Thunder Client because it makes it easier to kind of test and verify. But if a user wanted to create a product, you can kind of envision in your head, we need a form that's going to have like a title or a name. It's going to have a cost, a description, maybe an image, stuff like that. So make sure that you pass those things in. In this case, we can say like batteries. Is that how you spell battery? Let me just do something easy, like eggs. As you can tell, I don't know how to even like spell stuff. So cost could be $5.99. We're getting some really expensive eggs today. And description could be farm raised vegan, because you can really have vegan eggs, right? Not really. All right, let's go and do that. I just need to make sure I put double quotes on these. So let's try to do a post request to this endpoint and be surprised if it crashes. It did, it crashed. So let's look at why it crashed. I did the post request and it crashed. And it's because I am mixing my TypeScript / ES6 modules with CommonJS export. So really I need to say this. And I'll probably do that a lot. This is why I like another reason why I like you to use TypeScript on the back end as well. Like have both your front end and back end in TypeScript, because now you have consistent ways to export and import modules. It's kind of difficult to like require on your back end, and then when you're doing the front end code, have to do like import from, just like a nuance. But let's try doing this post request again and see what happens. It didn't fail, so that's probably a good sign. But I think right now we're doing the post request to the backend, but we're not actually using that data. So let's go back to the controller, and all that data that should be coming should be in the rec.body. So let's just console log that out just to make sure, the rec.body. And when we hit that endpoint, we should see something print out with name, cost, and whatever. And you see down here in the terminal, those things printed out. So you can use this to actually pass that to your model here. And then what we could do is just send back the, I think you could send back the instance. You might have to say like to JSON. I don't remember how to do this with Mongoose. But I mean, for right now, let's just send back instance and see what happens. So what I'm doing is taking the body that was sent in the post request, and that is what we're going to persist to Mongo down here. So after I hit this endpoint, we should see back a response that has some extra data in it. Let's go over here and verify that we get something back. All right, we see back, we get the response with the cost, name, description, but we also have like an ID that was sent back. This is the Mongo ID that was sent back in the request. And then I guess there's like a version. I don't know what this is. Really, the client shouldn't see this, so we should probably strip that out. There might be a different way to, instead of sending back an instance, we could send back like a raw JSON version of the instance. So let's kind of Google that. There's a toObject method. Let's just try that and see what happens. So instance instance to object, call it like a function, and let's hit that endpoint again, and let's see if that removes that _v. It doesn't. Okay, well, I guess that's just going to come back. I don't really like that, because now you're like abstracting your lower level implementation. People can know I'm using Mongo in the backend, especially since I'm doing _id here, but I guess it's not that big of a deal. All right, so we have an endpoint for creating products. People can hit that. And the important part of this is that we can have the UI hit this endpoint as well to create some new products for us. So maybe we can actually work on that. Let's just go ahead and go over to the client, and we're going to build out a really basic UI that does a post request to this endpoint. Let me just close out of some of this stuff. So going to the UI, right now it's kind of messy. I have like a test file that honestly we're not going to write tests because no one writes tests in tutorial videos. We have this logo, we don't need that. Web Vitals, I don't even know what this stuff is, but I'm just going to remove it because it's probably important, but it's probably, you know, explained in the docs of React or Create React App, but I'm just not going to read through that stuff because I'm too lazy. We have index.js. I think we need that. App.js, React Router. All right, so again, what we're trying to do is we need to have a page on the UI where we could potentially create products. Like, let's say you had an admin dashboard where you needed an admin to come in and update or edit products. I could just make a new path called like create product, and we could use that to basically show a new component here. So we're going to make a new component. I'm just going to say pages, and I'm going to make a new page called create product.jsx. And inside of this file, which for some reason is not loading up, it's very strange. Create product.jsx. Did I make it as a folder? I probably did. Okay, create product.jsx. There we go. Simple mistake. I think I created it as a folder instead of a file. But we want to make a new component which can be used for our page. So I'm just going to put like a title here called create product. And we are going to rename this to create. Let's get rid of this class name. We'll just call this create product. And for right now, we don't need to import CSS or do this stuff. But okay, so now we have a new JSX component for create product. But now what we want to do is we want to make sure that when someone goes to this path, it's going to load that component. So I'm going to say component is equal to, and I think I can do this. I could say create product and make sure I import that. Okay, so let's verify that. If I go to my application now, my UI, and go to create product, we should see it load up a title of create product. So I think that's working pretty good. So on this page, we're going to keep this pretty basic for right now, but we want to use some React Bootstrap to show a form. So I'm going to go React Bootstrap, and I'm going to see if we can figure out a good way to make a form. So I'm going to go to components here, type in form, and let's see if it takes us to a form page. This is super small. So on React Bootstrap, you basically like create a form like this. So it's just going to I'm going to copy all this stuff here. And we can paste that into our create product page and save that. It's going to fail on a bunch of stuff because we haven't imported the components for all this stuff. So let's import the form component from Bootstrap. Of course, it's not auto-completing. So import, I think it's just form from React Bootstrap. And there's probably like, what else do we need to import? The button maybe? Probably need a button. But we're going to edit all this stuff and just make it show what we want. So let's go back to our UI, make sure it works. Seems good. There's a small error in the console, but we'll kind of address that in a second because it's probably just related to this code we pasted in. But again, we're trying to create a product, right? We have a create product page. We want the user to be able to type in a name. So let's change this form label to a name. The form control is probably important to be like name and enter name. I don't need to like display that little helper hint text. That like stuff that shows up underneath. You see we have name here. We probably need to change password to cost. I think there's a way to say like number. Is it form type number? We'll figure it out. Yeah, you can use number and notice that it's like you can go up and down. So 11.22, make sure that works fine. And then this could be like milk. And then what we also need to do is go down here to this other form group, and we need to put the last thing, which was, I don't know if you need this control ID actually. You might. Let's just keep it. I'll say form name, form cost, form description. So I think we can use like a text area. Hopefully React Bootstrap has that. But if they don't, then we'll find out soon enough. Let's see. All right, let's just go here. Text, there's probably something like text area on this page, text area. Okay, so it's this, form control as text area. So let's just copy that in and we'll say, we definitely need a label. This will be like called description. And that's probably fine, text area. Go back to our app. So now we have a name, cost, and description. And notice that this is kind of like going all the way off to the left and the right of the page. I think it's because we're not using a container. Typically in React Bootstrap, there's something called a container, which you can use. And you can like define like a row and column grid system. So on the page itself, I'm going to put the container. And then that should kind of shrink everything in. So I'll do container here and container here to close off that bracket. And make sure I import it. All right, so that brought it in a little bit, but it still looks pretty bad. So I think there's probably a better way to like use columns to bring it in. Let's see if we have like columns here. Let me go to the layout tab over here. So yeah, you can do row and columns. You can make it fluid to make it like full screen, but really what we want to do is you can specify a size here. So I can say like on small devices, make it a 6. I'm just going to copy this. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is just the way I'm going to do it for right now. So we can make blank columns, and I guarantee you there's another way to do this, like using like pushes or pulls, but let's just get something working first and then we'll come back and refactor it. So I'm going to cut all that code out and put it right in here inside this container that's sandwiched in between two other containers, or I'm sorry, columns. I keep saying containers. So we got a container. That container needs a row, and that row typically has columns. And I basically have 3 columns, but the center column is specified of a width of 6. So if I go back to the app, that is going to crash because I have not imported column yet. Sorry, I drank a coffee and I feel like I'm jumping all over the place. So I hope you're following along and learning something. Let's see, maybe I should just remind myself to slow down just a little bit. Let me zoom out some of this. All right, so what we want to do now is we have the ability to type into these things, but we don't have this stored anywhere on state, right? So when someone submits the form in React, we need to like store this stuff on state somewhere. So let's go back to our React component here, and we are going to use some state variables to keep track of stuff. All right, I also don't like using placeholders, so let me just remove these placeholders. It's like the label kind of tells you what needs to be in there, so why do we have placeholders? All right, so if I refresh that page, we got no placeholders, and that looks better in my opinion. And then I really don't know if you need control ID. I'm just going to delete it for now, but it'll probably bite me in the butt later on. All right, so what we're trying to do is I need to create some state and have these things kind of update the state as people type. So what I could do here is I'm going to say const form set form, and that's going to be a useState function call, which is going to take an empty object of, or not an empty object, but like a default object of name of empty string, cost of empty string. Ooh, cost should be, I'll just say not a number. And then description could also be an empty string or null, whatever you want to do. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that the value of these form controls are actually set to the different values of the form state. So I'm going to say value of the first control is form.name. The value of the second one is form.cost. And then the value of the last one is form.description. All right, so just to verify that, before we get too far into the weeds, just go ahead and like add some stuff here and verify that it shows up. If it does, you've kind of set up your state correctly and you're binding it to the components correctly. But we want to start off with nothing, so let me kind of revert that stuff. And then when someone types into these form controls, I believe there's an onChange listener you can use. At this point, this is getting way out of hand, so let me kind of put these on new lines. I don't know why my prettier is not working. I'm going to have to set that up. Maybe I'll do that when I don't have eyes watching me, because I'm probably going to spend like 30 minutes trying to remember how to do that. But now I can say whenever someone types into this form control, I think it just passes you the value. I'm not sure how React Bootstrap does it, but let's just debug this before we start writing code and we don't know what it does. You could also probably go to the docs and read that, but I like to live on the edge and just do something like this. So E is going to have, okay, so this is just the event. So I think we definitely need to say E here and say current target dot value. I think that's how you can get the value of the text input, which is very kind of identical to how it works with other inputs, not necessarily React Bootstrap inputs. So when someone types into this form control, we just want to say set form, and we can say dot 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 form to basically take the existing form, which was defined up here, and we want to overwrite, in this case, name, because this is the name control. So I can say name is equal to e.current_target.value. Okay. So this should work. As I type in, you'll see that this gets updated. And you can actually go to your components here, and I can kind of hover over this component to figure out what is the state of create product. You can see I have a hook here. This is the state, and as I'm typing, you'll see that that thing gets changed to what you need. So that's working correctly. And I could follow that same approach for the other inputs and just kind of change the what this title is here. So this one would be cost, and then do it again, and this one would be description. And just verify that this thing is all like updating the state properly. So you'll see that these three things are updated in our console down here. What else do we need to do? I would definitely refactor this code, because now we could dry this up, and there's like there's libraries out there that you can do form stuff with. So I could just do like a quick little function that says like update form value. That's going to take a key and a value, and we can just call that method here. Let's do key here, values here. And that's a step in the right direction. I think there's some more cleanup that we could probably do from that. So I could say update form value of name and then e.current_target.value. Again, this is, yeah, I'm gonna make this a factory function. So it takes a key, and it's gonna return a function of e. And then it's going to basically update e.current_target of value. And I think that'll work a little bit better. I don't know how performant this is, but now what we could do is make it a factory function, pass it name, and I think that should work. So make sure you go back and make sure that nothing is broken. But okay, this is working pretty good. So if you don't know what I did here, I'd definitely go back and like refresh your JavaScript skills. But this is a function that takes in key, which returns another function that's going to take in that event. And then we can basically just easily update these form values by passing it either name, this one could be cost, and then this one could be description. And again, this is probably not the most performant way to do this, but honestly, it's a page that has 3 controls. So don't worry about performance unless you physically see or visually see a performance while you're using the application. Some people get so caught up on performance, and it's like, dude, your page has 5 components. Like, why are you worried about performance on a 5-component page? But anyway, that's not even, I'm getting off topic. So we have this stuff stored in state, and I showed you that using that components tab. Now when we click submit, we want to send that post request to the backend. So on the front end, I'm going to make sure that I have Axios installed. I don't think I installed it yet. So let's make up a new tab here, go to the client, npm install save Axios. And that is a library that you can use on the front end to kind of help you do post requests. But what I'm going to do is when the form is submitted, so on submit, I'll just call a function called like submit form. Or I could say create product. Whatever you want to name it. Probably create product's a better description. And that is going to call a function which is going to basically hit our API. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say axios.post. I'm going to just hit the endpoint of HTTP localhost 8080/products, and then we can pass in some data here, which in our case, we could just pass in the form. And I think that's it. I think that'll actually hit the backend, and we should probably also do an await on it, and we should clear out the form. So after this is done hitting the backend, I'm going to say set form is equal to that empty object or that default object. Default form object. So I'm doing some refactoring here. I'm going to set that to default form object. You know what? Let's just let's just do this. So I'm making a constant up here, pulling this out, and we are going to just kind of dry up that code a little bit. And then when the actual use state hook fires, it's going to just set that form equal to this. Again, there's probably other ways I could do this, but I mean, this one should hopefully work. All right, so this one's saying Axios is not defined, so I want to make sure I auto import that. And of course, my auto import is not working right now, so I'm going to go ahead and just go up here and say import Axios from Axios. That should kind of import it correctly. Now, the moment of truth, we'll type in some stuff. So I'll say like milk costs $4.99 and yummy, yummy almond milk. Let me do this. So if I click submit, we should expect this network tab to actually try to do a post request to our API. We should see it clear out the form. We should see our API over here print out a message if we still have that in place. Let me make sure that's in place before we get too ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to our server and make sure that when we hit that endpoint, we actually print out. Let me do this. I just want to kind of show you that we do get a request. So let's just submit. I think it crashed actually. We have an error. So let's see what happened. Cannot receive NAA for the value attribute. This is expected, casted to a string. All right, let's just go back. Maybe NAN is not a good thing to use. I'm going to say 0 for cost and see if this actually fixes it. So I'll try it again. Milk cost is $10, and I'll just put a random description here. Click submit. And it is, oh, okay. So, okay. You're probably going to hit this a lot as a beginner. When you submit a form, by default, the page is going to reload because that's how form submissions work on HTML. So you need to say e.prevent default here to prevent it from refreshing your page. But you'll notice that the backend actually got the request. So we can actually go to Mongo and we can like verify that we got that stuff. So we did. We have like the yummy, yummy almond milk here. But I just want to show you because that was, you know, we ran into a bug. If I do this again, I could say like, hello. Okay, I'll say like rice. And that's like $2.99. And that is uncooked rice for you to steam. Let's try it again. Click submit. The form clears out. We get a request down here to the products endpoint. You click on this, you can see that it actually did a post request. We got back a good 200 status code. If you don't know much about status codes, 200 means everything worked fine, like the backend processed the request and probably stored the data. And you can scroll down and view the headers that were sent and the headers that came back in the request. But kind of I want to see what got sent over, which is this is what we sent to the backend. This is the payload we sent over, hence the name request payload. And then you can go to response here to see what the backend sent back to us. Or you can click preview if you want to see it in like a nice JSON viewer. But yeah, I mean, we have a endpoint, or we have a page that can actually send over data to the backend. The backend saves it to Mongo. And that's pretty much all I wanted to show you in this part 2 of this video. We're going to keep on building upon this and just keep on hacking at this application, refactoring, running into bugs. So if you find this useful and you find that you're learning something by watching me, you know, just experiment and build something, then be sure to follow along, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below if you want to see this project go in a different direction, or if you have comments about how I've done something with React Bootstrap. And also be sure to subscribe if you want to learn more about React. All right, well, that wraps up this part 2. Be sure to stay tuned for part 3, where I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm sure we're going to learn some new things. So, all right, happy coding.